you have way more agency and autonomy over your life than you think you do. And
Mhm.
just because you were born into this geographic location or socioeconomic place, it's not where you have to end up. And you can
Yeah.
break those generational cycles and curses, and you can
Yeah.
change your family tree and leave the legacy you want to live.
Hey, friends, welcome to the Jolie Harris Show. Let's dive into today's episode. George, today you are a net worth millionaire. Can you talk about quickly, like, what that means? Because even for myself a few years ago, when people think millionaire, they think you're making $1 million a year, right? and I,
I wish.
right.
That would be fun, but yeah, a millionaire it's gotten a weird connotation,
Yeah.
and when people think about millionaires, now they're thinking about billionaires by accident.
Mm,
They're thinking about
mm,
that lifestyle, they're thinking Taylor
mhm.
Swift, private jets. Millionaires, it takes 1,000 millions to get to 1,000,000,000, and so I won't see that in my lifetime unless God does something miraculous, and I'm okay with that, but millionaire just means that you have a net worth, meaning what you own is worth $1,000,000 between your retirement accounts, the equity in your home, the money in the bank, cars, whatever those things may be. And so the formula is really simple. It's assets minus liabilities equals net worth. What you own minus what you owe. And what's beautiful is that when you get out of debt and you don't have a mortgage payment, you don't have anything on the liabilities column. And so it's all just building your net worth from there. And so that's what my wife and I did. And she works here at Ramsey too. And we pre-decided even before we got married that we wanted to live a debt-free life, that we wanted to raise a family in a debt-free household. And so in our early 30s, we got our house paid off. And that's allowed us to have more margin, more options, more joy,
Mm,
with still another 30 working years ahead of us to, bless others and live freely and spend and have some really fun experiences. So it's that simple. And there's
yeah.
nothing fancy I did. I'm a W-2 employee for the last 11 years here at Ramsey. I didn't start and launch in a huge business. I simply really was faithful every day for
Yeah.
11 years, got promotions and became a Ramsey personality. And, my wife and I didn't have a six-figure income until we got married. And so this wasn't like, well, George must have just had this insane income and that's how they did it. This was diligence. This was just going,
Yeah.
I'm going to get out of debt as soon as I can. I'm going to put money away into a 401k at 15%. I'm going to get the house paid off as soon as I can. And with house appreciation and investments growing with compound appreciation, all of that, you just look up one day and your net worth statement says, oh, you guys have a household of millionaires. And so that was a really cool milestone. And again, it didn't change my life. We didn't go out and buy a boat and, retire on a beach somewhere. We still live the same life. We just have more margin and we can take care of our stuff better. We can get some nicer things, but it's not a huge drastic change when you go from 999,000 to 1,000,000. You
Mm,
still gotta pay the bills, you still gotta wipe the dog's tushies when they come in,
yeah.
and so it's a very normal life, but it's a better life.
Oh, for sure. And I think that principle applies to entrepreneurship too. Like, things happening gradually. And Dave talks about that because, Ramsey is a huge company. I mean, congrats. The Ramsey show is #1 in the country right now. Amazing. But it took time to get there. And Dave, like you, worked hard for a long time, and God grew the company gradually, just like God grew your income gradually. So there's definitely something to be said about that principle. Can you peel back the curtain just a little bit and talk about some of those uncomfortable sacrifices that you had to make along that journey? Because it's definitely not like a rocket ship, right? Where you're like point A to point B, it just happened. Like there's a process there, there's sacrifices that are being made that people don't see.
Yeah, there's a lot of momentum that has to be built, and that usually happens later on in your life and your career,
Mm,
and Dave always jokes that he's a 30-year overnight success because people are always like, "Wow, Dave, like,
yeah,
look at this. This just
right.
happened." And he's like, "Yeah, where were you 30 years ago?"
Mhm.
During the hard times. And so when I started 11 years ago, we had 300 team members. Now we have almost 1,100. And so that took time to build. And Dave truly wasn't in a rush. He was
Mhm.
aggressive and wanted to
Mhm.
scale this thing and build this thing that God had, given him to steward. But we do things at the speed of cash. And so even having our own building, that only happened in 2019. When Dave
Wow,
built a
wow.
custom building just for this place to house all of us. And so it's been really cool to see from the leadership level that we really believe this stuff. And that allows us to go, at a slower pace with less risk, with more intentionality. And that's hard for business owners to do because most people that want to start a business aren't hoping it's successful 10 years from now. They want it to be amazing 1 year from now.
Yeah.
But the problem is the first year of business is your worst year of business, most likely, and the fifth year starts to get better. The 10th year, you're like, okay, I figured this out. Maybe you scaled a team if that's what you're aiming for. And then by 15 years in, you're like, all right, I figured this out. And then all of a sudden there's a succession plan to think about of like, okay, what do I do now? And that's the stage Dave is in, is this legacy building stage where it's how do I pass this on to where it doesn't, crush the next people taking it over, whether that's family or someone else. And how do I do it in a way where it's a smooth handoff that doesn't destroy the business and what we've worked hard to build? And so that's the phase that we're in now. And that's part of having Ramsey personalities. That's a
Yeah.
big change. And that takes swallowing your pride and ego. When you built this place, it's built on one personality, Dave Ramsey. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, the Dave Ramsey show turns into the Ramsey show.
Mhm.
And it becomes about the big R versus about Dave himself. And so
Mhm.
that's hard to do as an entrepreneur, especially as you get later on in
Yeah.
life. And Dave jokes that you don't want to, throw the keys to the business when you're falling into the grave. That's not a good way
Mm.
to go. It
Mhm.
doesn't serve your heirs well. It doesn't serve the business well. And so you've got to be thinking about the long term and not just what am I going to do tomorrow?
Hey, we're about to jump right back into this interview, but before we do, I want to tell you about a free 5-day devotional to help you stop feeling anxious about your finances. Head over to joliejharris.com/moneydevo. That's joliejharris.com/moneydevo, and I will leave that link in the description for you. All right, let's get back to the interview.
So speaking of that, in with your new book, Breaking Free from Broke, Dave Ramsey called it the financial peace for the new generation. That's a hefty statement, George. What is it like filling those shoes?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm just like, I look up and I'm like, God, you chose me? Like, I'm very grateful, but also like, why? You know what I mean? Like no one had this on their bingo card. And so it's been really fun and humbling to just sit next to Dave, who I've looked up to
Yeah.
for so long, and sit next to him on the Ramsey show. And he's looking at me going, all right, speak, my friend,
Oh,
help these people. And so
yeah.
it's been a really fun challenge. Not only because the principles are tried and true. We're
Yeah.
not here to come up with baby step 8.
Right.
Baby steps work. They're not broken, so don't fix
Mhm.
it. So the challenge for me was how do I grapple with what people are going through in 2024 and beyond? How do I reach these next generations who maybe
Mm.
won't listen to, a 63-year-old bald white man, but maybe they'll listen to a 34-year-old guy with some more hair. And so that's been a fun challenge to go, how do we infuse humor? How do we make this
Mhm.
relatable? How do we bring in new research and new studies and new stories and analogies to really connect this to show people, hey, while the principles are 30 years old, they're not out of date. They're not out of touch. And so I've just modernized it with my own story of,
Mhm.
hey, I lived this out in the last decade. You can too. I'm a
Yeah.
normal guy. I didn't come from money. My parents are immigrants. And I just wanted to empower people to go, you have way more agency and autonomy over your life than you think you do. And just
Mhm.
because you were born into this geographic location or socioeconomic place, it's not where you have to end up, and you can
Yeah.
break those generational cycles and curses, and you can
Yeah.
change your family tree and leave the legacy you want to live and live a life you're not exhausted by. And as a case study in that, it's easy for me to say it, but then also pointing to the millions of people who have done it and overcome the odds. Those are the
Yeah.
ones that inspire me every day.
Oh, that's awesome. How can this book make a difference for our listeners who might be in different stages of building their business?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, the personal finances are the start. And if you don't have that together, that is the prerequisite to starting a business. And if you don't have that foundation of I'm out of debt, I've got the emergency fund, I understand all of the traps that are out there, you're going to get bombarded because business folks have the unique
Yeah.
ability to make a lot of mistakes with a lot of zeros on the end. And
Mhm.
there's so much more marketing and distractions toward entrepreneurs and business owners
Yeah.
because of how much of a trend it's become, especially for these younger generations. They're like, hey, I don't want to be like my mom and dad who worked for the same company
Mhm.
for 30 years just to hope to get a pension and retire one day. I want to live my best life now. I want to have wealth now. And so there's so many traps out there this book will help them avoid, to help them understand how the system is designed to keep them broke, to show them that it's not all their fault, but it's their responsibility, and to show them how to rise above it with peace and confidence and margin so that they can start this business with less risk and more intentionality and hopefully way more success.
Oh, I love that. Peace, confidence, and margin. It sounds so good. Feels good.
Feel
Um,
good story.
yeah,
And
it
I
is.
believe it. It's I say at the end of the book, I talk about this grappling with hope versus cynicism,
Mm,
because I was very cynical as a 23-year-old guy starting this journey. And I thought, the world just out to get me. Life is just happening to me. The system is designed to screw me over. Woe is me. I'm just going to sit here and hope someone else fixes everything. And I'm just going to complain on Twitter until someone does something about it. But the day that I looked in the mirror and said, hey, that guy's the problem and he's the solution, that's when everything changed. And as a business owner, it's easy to be like, well, in this market, it's just so hard. And that's why the business failed, instead of really going, hey, I wasn't a good steward of this money. I could have
mm.
done better, with the strategy and the business plan instead of rushing into it. And we could talk all day about business mistakes that people have made out there. But at the end of the day, there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And the best way is with less risk, more intentionality, and no debt.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for those who are a little further along in the journey, maybe they're not 20 anymore and they've made those mistakes. They could be hearing this and be like, "Oh, that's great for you. It's too late for me," but it's not too late. Doesn't
You can
matter
turn
what
it
stage.
around. Yeah,
Yeah.
the some of the coolest debt-free screams are people who started businesses, maybe the business failed, they had all this debt to pay off, and they overcame the odds, whether it was through another business or through their
Yeah.
full-time W-2 job, and they pay off that debt, and they're in their 40s or 50s or even 60s, and those are the ones that really inspire me because it's not too late, and I've
Yeah.
had people reach out. I thought this book would reach people you know, in their teens and 20s and 30s. What I didn't know was that people that are in their 50s would be reaching out saying, thank you for this book. It gave me hope that
Mhm.
it's not too late to turn my situation around. No one ever told me it was
So
possible for
good.
me. Thank you for that. And that's been really, really cool to see,
Mm.
because it's true. I don't say it to just make you feel good. I
Yeah.
say it because I've seen it done and I believe in that person reading the book, that as long as you can fog up a mirror, you still got time.
Yes, there's hope for all of us, for sure.